Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon. Selamat sore. Depending on wherever you are right now, maybe we would like to wait about a couple of minutes. Is that okay, Mr. Kenneth?
Sure. Take your time.
Okay. Selamat sore, depending on wherever you are. Welcome to mini webinar and brief discussions on data mining dalam penanggulangan terorisme, arranged by Center for Extremism, Radicalism, and Security Studies. Okay, first, let me introduce myself. My name is Firsty Cynthia, and shortly you can call me Miss Firsty. I am a lecturer at Universitas Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jawa Timur. It's located at Surabaya, Mr. Kenneth. And I will be responsible for hosting and moderating these discussions today. And I'm glad to welcome Mr. Kenneth, who will share with us about his experiences and knowledge about data mining for counterterrorism. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kenneth is a research analyst at the International Center for Political Violence and Terrorism Research at SIS Singapore. And also, he specialized at the jihadi terrorism. And also, he used both quantitative and qualitative methods to study about the terrorist itself. And it includes social network analysis and geospatial analytics. Okay, short introductions to our topic today. You know that the terrorism is widely known as a global threat. Actually, after the collapse of 9/11 agenda, the rise of terrorist attacks are overwhelmed with the globalizations, the form and way to spread the attacks are very diverse, especially now through the internet, spreading their networks. The terrorists also funding through Telegram, through Twitter, and now they also use Bitcoins, Bitcoins to fund their agenda. I have read Mr. Kenneth's newest writings at the Diplomats, titled As Southeast Asia Reopens, Will Transnational Terrorism Return? It's a very interesting writings, actually. That many states right now loosen up their security during the COVID-19. Now all of the states are focusing on their health security, but in the reality, not now, the terrorists, despite efforts to keep terrorism down, the terrorist groups continue to express the political will for violence. And the topics today, how can we counter those movements through data mining? How to mining the data from the internet or whatever to know and to counter those movements. Okay, the flow of discussions. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping notes, Mr. Kenneth. The webinar will be start by your presentations. Then we have questions and answer this sessions. So for the Q&A sessions, if you have any questions for Mr. Kenneth, please raise your virtual hands and turn on your microphone when I call you to ask the questions. Or maybe you can also use the chat feature in the sessions to ask your questions. Then I will read your questions out loud. Okay, let's have Mr. Kenneth on the floor. Mr. Kenneth, nice to meet you. The screen is yours right now.
Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen shortly. Can everyone see my screen right now?
Clearly.
All right, thank you. So let me just set out the outline of the presentation. So what I will do is I'll do a short introduction about myself. I'll move on to some key trends in terrorist movements right now and discuss how I collected data and generated this analysis. So I'll probably keep my presentation short, so I allocate more time for the Q&A session, and also we'll do some live demonstration with regards to some of the queries you might have. So just a brief introduction of me, which I think your lecturer has given a very comprehensive introduction. I'm a terrorism researcher in Singapore. I specialize in counterterrorism and counterinsurgency research in Southeast Asia, and I developed this tool that you can use called the Southeast Asia Militant Atlas. So this Militant Atlas, we do the data collection for you. We document every single terrorist incident in Southeast Asia and put it on the map. And this map is interactive. You can actually play around with this map, and I'll show you how you can access this map later. So some trends in terrorism, it started way before 9/11 in 1995. That's the Operation Bojinka. Operation Bojinka is a very ambitious plot where Al-Qaeda members, led by Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, KSM, wanted to launch several aeroplane bombs into the United States. And that is the precursor for the 9/11 attack. Subsequently, we are seeing a lot of different kind of embassy bomb plots. We are looking at bombings of hotels, resorts, a very touristy destination. But since the collapse, or rather the decline of the Jemaah Islamiyah and the rise of ISIS, we are looking at a different form of threat today. So the kind of threats we are looking at is like the Marawi siege, where in Philippines, a group of Islamic State affiliated soldiers, or rather militants, they captured and dominated a city in Marawi that's in southern Philippines. We're also looking at a rise in suicide bombing, and not just suicide bombing, looking at a rise at family suicide bombing. I think in Surabaya, it's the first case of a family suicide bombing where they targeted many different areas. And also this trend is expanded to the Philippines, where many of the Filipinos and Indonesians the Indonesian family actually migrated to the Philippines to conduct suicide bombings there. And we are also looking at kind of a different profile of maritime kidnap for ransom activities in this period of time. So there's less kidnapping of, say, foreigners, rather they are kidnapping fishermen, Indonesian fishermen, Malaysian fishermen, tugboats and stuff like that. So it's a very different profile of threat. So the targets, as we can see today, it's pretty different. In the pre-ISIS era, there's a lot of emphasis on targeting foreigners, chasing away the Westerners, attacking American or Israeli interests. And now in the post-ISIS context, we are looking at more targets against locals, law enforcement, military, places of worship, and even people who are Southeast Asians. So it's a pretty different kind of threat we are looking at today. But how do given the rather reduced threat of terrorism, I would still emphasize that terrorism is it's an important topic to look at, because there are more than 300,000 people were displaced in Southeast Asia because of terrorism. Because of the authorities' skirmishes, battles between the terrorists and the military. We are seeing a lot of people, although they are not killed, their homes are lost, their lives are disrupted, and livelihoods are affected. So it's a very disruptive organization that we are dealing with, a very disruptive threat, although it does not necessarily kill, like the 9/11 attack where they killed 2,000 people. Still, many people's lives are displaced and lost due to the threat of terrorism. So how do we collect information on terrorism? And I'd like to share two main sources of information. Firstly, the public sources and the social media intelligence. These are all categorized under the framework of open source intelligence, OSINT, because the collecting information as a researcher, it's very difficult. If you want to penetrate a terrorist organization, there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of uncertainty, and what's safest to do is to collect information from the open source and generate sound analysis before going down to the field to understand the situation better. And surprisingly, you'll find that there's through the open source, we are able to collect many information, and we can almost paint a complete picture of the terrorist landscape without even going to the field if we know how to use some of these tools and techniques to collect this information. And these tools and techniques could be translated to other forms of research as well through your university research. And I'm going to share how we are going to use these tools and techniques. So some of the tools for data collection in terms of the public sources is, I'll use 3 different tools to describe. Firstly, Google Docking, and I'll do a live demonstration of what Google Docking is. Through Google, we are able to customize our search keys to pinpoint exactly what kind of results comes out on Google and get the most accurate responses. So we don't have to read entire articles. We can actually pinpoint specific articles, specific websites that gives us the exact information that we need. Secondly, I will introduce this tool called the Open Knowledge Map, which looks into academic journals and understands how each topic links and relates to each other. I think it is also a very interesting tool. And then next, finally, I will introduce you to some of the reputable journals, places where you can use it as a library to boost your knowledge on a specific topic before going down to understand the threats on the ground. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of public sources? Firstly, they are reliable and verified, especially when you look at the libraries, when you look at the Google sources. These are verified sources where Google actually have already done the homework for you to scan through. Hey, is this information credible? Is this information reliable? And then it's up on Google as compared to other source of intelligence. Secondly, it's easy to access. I mean, most of us are in a university setting, and I presume that you have access to some form of library. So it is not out of the way, and most of this information are free to access. You can just log on to your university portal and get this information. Even if you don't use your university portal, most of the information provided by Google is free. However, because of the nature of the topic that you are searching for, Google might not answer the research question in a specific enough manner. So that's where you will look into other forms of data sources, be it social media intelligence, be it, say, ground interviews, looking into people who really knows the topic inside out and start to interview them. But I would strongly suggest that whatever research we are doing, be it terrorism or anything, look at public sources first and understand the topic clearly enough before you go down to experts or your intelligence agencies to question them about the topic. Because I think one thing that we do not want to commit is asking a question to an expert that is already found on is already available on Google. So that I will show you how we can customize our Google search keys to get specific information that you might want to look into. Next, we also use what we call social media intelligence, to gather intelligence on terrorist groups. And I'll show you some of the sources where we gather information from terrorist groups as well, because these groups are getting more and more complex, and we are, or rather some agencies are facing a tougher time in terms of keeping up with the trends. So there are open sources, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where you just befriend the person, follow the person, and all the information are on the walls. And there are also encrypted sources. These are instant messaging platforms like WhatsApp, Telegram, and this emerging Rocket Chat, which I will share with you on the live demonstration. And also there are emerging hidden forums where it's password protected, and it is more difficult to penetrate and get insights from. So that's where most of the gems of information would be. But what are the trade-offs of this? Of course, firstly, the strength is that the kind of information that we getting is primary information, targeted. You might be able to answer the kind of research question that you might have. However, to look into social media, there's a lot of chatter, there's lots of noise. You have to scroll through forums, maybe 10 pages before you actually get the kind of information that you want. And even if you get the information that you want, this information is from the source itself. It's not verified, it's not reliable, and you have to cross-check with various sources. So that's the trade-offs of using encrypted sources. So I emphasize again, before even stepping into encrypted sources, go through your public sources first, familiarize yourself with the topic before actually entering these encrypted sources. Otherwise, it's very difficult to understand some of these trends and patterns that you might be seeing online. So after you collected all this data, you have to organize data before you can actually analyze data. And I propose this framework, which I always share with my peers, which before we even go into data collection exercise, we always want to ask ourselves, what is the research question? What is the puzzle that we want to solve? And maybe I'll just give an example. Maybe I want to know the impact of leadership decapitation, killing the leader of terrorist organization. What does it do? And that it becomes my research question. What is the impact of leadership decapitation? But breaking down the question is also very important. What's the hypothesis? How do I measure impact of leadership decapitation? Am I measuring it based on the frequency of attacks? And why is frequency of attacks important? Is it because I'm measuring mobilization of militants? Am I measuring the severity of attacks? The kind of damage that the terrorist organization can conduct before and after leader dies? And thirdly, am I measuring the membership? So these are the three hypotheses that I might have in terms of getting this, unpacking the research question. And then I move on to asking myself what kind of data I need to answer this question. So from this idea of leadership decapitation, I need probably four types of data. Firstly, I need a list of leaders, terrorist leaders that died during a specific duration. Secondly, I need to know, probably if I want to know the frequency of attack occurring from a certain time period. Thirdly, maybe the severity of attack from a certain time period. So maybe how many people were killed, injured, for each attack. And finally, the membership strength. So this idea of membership is very difficult because we will never know how many terrorists are within the terrorist organization itself in any given point of time. So the way I propose to calculate membership is to calculate the reduction of membership. So that's also a way to conceptualize membership. So I can calculate the amount of arrests, I can calculate the amount of militants surrendered, or the militants killed. And I'll show you how that can be done using a database that I've built. And finally, after collecting all this information, what are the tools I can use to understand the trends that are available based on the data I've collected? So this process of streamlining the data I'm looking at through having a research question, developing multiple hypotheses from the research question, identify the types of data that I need, and then looking at the tools that I can use to analyze the data is very important. I cannot emphasize any more than this. So this is a database that I've used. The points actually represents all incidents, all terrorist incidents in Southeast Asia. So when you look at these points, this is what I call data, where I can't really make up anything from these points. I know there's some clusters around, but it doesn't really tell me much. But using tools to simplify data, I'm able to highlight certain hotspots of terrorist incidents. So let me just show you what are these hotspots. So what I did in this map is to use this tool called RStudio. RStudio is a statistical software that is able to process complex information. And for this, I use hotspot analysis to understand the density of incidents within Southeast Asia. And as you can see, a lot of this noise and chatter from the map is being removed because we are using a statistical tool to understand the hotspots on terrorism. And we can even zoom in to look at the map where most of these hotspots are located. Oops, sorry. Most of these hotspots are located in the Sulu-Celebes Seas, and that prompts further questions of why are these hotspots located in the Sulu-Celebes Seas? What are the characteristics of these hotspots? And just from my brief, my knowledge of terrorism, I already know that these hotspots located around the Sulu-Celebes Seas are there because they are the bases of terrorist sanctuaries. So if the blue hotspot where we are looking at is the base where most of the Abu Sayyaf activities are, and that's where they are based at. The orange is the BIFF bases, and also the brown one down at Sulawesi, it's MIT. So then we are able to see some correlations after we are able, streamline this data that we have have collected. So it's very important to streamline data to have your research question, to be able to identify the right tools to break down the data. And from findings, from specific findings, you're able to branch off more research questions and then follow through on the process of digging, identify a hypothesis, digging data, and developing more research questions. So that's how we go down the rabbit hole of terrorism. Let me just, sorry, this is blue line here, I'm not sure. Okay.
Committee, please remove.
Sorry about that.
Can someone help me?
It's okay, I'll just deal with the blue line then. So other things that we can look at, it's just based on collecting data, it's that maybe your question is, what's the impact of COVID-19 on terrorism? And based on this chart alone, we are able to see that, hey, terrorism is on the upward trend from 2017 to 2019. However, when COVID hit in 2020, there's a significant decrease in terrorist activities over the years. So we see a reduction of activities in 2020 to 2021, and before 2022 ends, I can already tell you that there's a further reduction of terrorist activities in 2022 based on my database. And I'll show the data, how I collect this data. So from this systematic collection of data, we are able to say generate more research questions, right? Like why COVID-19 has negatively impacted terrorism. And I believe lecturer Firsty has already shared my article on the Diplomat, and I've explained that it's mainly due to the border closure. So from data analysis, we are able to develop more research questions to dive into specific topics better. So as I've shared as well, it is very important to keep running lists of database in an organized manner, and showing you the list of terrorist leaders that were killed, and also some counter-terrorism indicators. As I mentioned before, right? I'm unable to measure membership in terrorist organizations because I do not have the information, and there's no way I can get this information from the authorities. Especially when we are looking at groups like Abu Sayyaf, they're hiding in the jungle. So unless I go down to the group itself and ask the leader of the group, how many members do you have? Wow. How many members you have in the group? Let me just maybe stop sharing.
Wait. Okay.
And then share it.
Okay, maybe please the host try to make sure it is safe for Mr. Kenneth to speak up.
Sure. No worries.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
no worries. So just sharing the impact of leadership decapitation. Then, after killing the leader, what happens to a terrorist group? And if we look at 2020, or maybe I'll just do a shift. Hajan Satwajan was killed in 25th August 2020. So that's about the third quarter of, is it third? Yeah, third quarter of 2020. And we just draw a line from the third quarter of 2020 and we see after the death of Hajan Satwajan.
Okay, wait.
There's, never mind, I'll just talk over this. After the death of Hajan Satwajan, there's an increase in the number of surrenders of the terrorist group. So at this point in time, I do not know how many members are there in the terrorist group, but I know for certain that there is a significant increase in number of surrenders. So the terrorist group's strength have declined significantly. There's a Michael in this group, right?
I think I saw a penis.
Okay. It's okay. Is it possible to
Okay,
remove...
wait. We need to make sure to close the Zoom first. Okay, Mas, Mas yang dari C-ERSS, tolong itu di close aja ya supaya nggak open gini. Karena biasanya banyak intruder gitu. Mas Farika, Mas Dono. Mungkin karena ini dibuat open ya. Jadi biasanya banyak intruder gitu. Di close aja ya. Di security terus di enable waiting room aja atau di lock meetingnya.
Mbak Farika mungkin bisa minta tolong.
Oh ya, Mbak. Oke, sudah lock ya. Oke. Mr. Kenneth, can you please to stop? Yeah. Okay. We are really sorry because maybe the Zoom is not locked the meeting. That's why there's a lot of intruder. Okay, please continue, Mr.
Let me just reshare the screen. All right. Yeah, so I was just sharing that there is a significant increase in the number of surrenders. So although I don't know the total membership strength of Abu Sayyaf, I know that after this point in time, there's the number of militants that are within Abu Sayyaf has reduced significantly. This can be replicated into other groups where I shared about the BIFF Bangsa Moro Islamic Freedom Fighters, the Mujahidin Indonesia Timor as well. So what I'm trying to emphasize is that we have to start from the research question, understanding the research question, understanding the hypothesis, and then figure out what kind of data we need for our analysis. And even if say I want to understand the membership strength and I am unable to get this data, there are other ways of collecting data that can also answer the question. So although I don't know the increase and decrease of membership, I can actually generate data that tells us the decrease in specific decrease in membership of terrorist organizations to understand my research question better. So moving forward, as we know that from data collected, and it's undisputed that terrorism is on the decline in Southeast Asia, does it mean that terrorist is out of, it's no longer a threat? And I argue that it's not, that it's no longer a threat. That's where we combine quantitative and qualitative data together to understand the complete picture of terrorism. As what researchers like us know, that through this chatter, the terrorists are talking about this idea of idat, preparing for a war. They are doing fundraising, procuring weapons. Although they are not launching attacks, they are doing something. In Indonesia, Jemaah Islamiyah has many scholars, and when you look into chat groups, they're talking about Jemaah Islamiyah infiltrating the state, infiltrating politics, infiltrating society, civil society organizations. And if you're looking at the Philippines, for example, although they're not launching full-scale attacks, there's a lot of terrorist recruitment, particularly in Lanao del Sur. It's the northern part of Mindanao, if we are familiar of that. So some key trends that we found is that this picture of Abu Zakaria, the current leader of ISIS in Philippines, is being circulated on the web. So it's also useful not just to look into, say, the public sources, which tells us one story, while the close encrypted sources also tells us the other side of the story, where the leader is actively, or rather, the leader is firstly recognized by the Islamic State, and secondly, actively recruiting in the region. Next, we also saw the development of this WhatsApp group chat called the East Asia Nights, where people are discussing about terrorist activities quite actively in the group chat. So through observing the topics of discussion, we are able to highlight certain trends, specific trends, and of terrorism. The other side of the threat is that the borders are reopening. I mean, it's a good thing that we are able to travel again, we are able to visit different countries, but that also means that terrorists are able to do so as well. And as what the Defense Minister of Singapore actually said, with the removal of travel restrictions, right, we should expect transnational terrorism to return. And in what form, you may ask? As of today, there are 800 Southeast Asians currently held up in various camps in Syria and Iraq, mostly held up in Al-Hol camp. Some have crossed the Iranian border to join ISIS in Khorasan, that's in Afghanistan. So the question is whether there is interest from this community to come back to Southeast Asia to launch another attack. And this is not unprecedented. During so after the Soviet-Afghan conflict, we also seen several Afghan alumni, as they call themselves, or Afghan veterans from Afghanistan, traveling back to Southeast Asia and creating the Jamaah Islamiyah, creating different groups in, like for example, Abu Sayyaf as well, to wreak havoc in Southeast Asia. So this is certainly a possibility where the 800 Southeast Asians are migrating back to Southeast Asia to take the fight back in Southeast Asia. And from all these discussions, I'll share that there's three enablers of terrorism: international network, as we have seen, connections with Al-Qaeda, connections with ISIS will exponentially increase the threat of the group. Local community support as well. Terrorist groups can never take hold in the country if the locals do not resonate with their ideology. And finally, funding as a very important source, because without funding, you're not able to buy bombs, buy weapons, recruit people. So these are the three enablers of terrorism. And given the complexity of terrorism, because it's a transnational threat, the region has to work together. And fortunately, the region is working together to combat these threats. So to combat the threat of transnational network, the porous border, we have this trilateral cooperative arrangement. As we have shared, I shared earlier, there's this threat of the Sulu Celebes Seas, where most of the terrorist activities are located around the Sulu Celebes Seas. The trilateral cooperative arrangement is a maritime patrol arrangement between the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia after the Marawi siege, to ensure that borders between these countries are hardened. They make sure that terrorists do not exploit the weak maritime borders to travel from one country to the other to conduct terrorist attacks. Although slip-ups may happen, but it is still a good initiative to combat terrorism. Apart from this, we also have the All Eyes initiative. It's an intelligence sharing arrangement between some of the ASEAN countries to ensure that we create a common database. And the idea of database is very important here, where we are able to analyze some of this data if the data is recorded in a systematic manner. And finally, countering terrorism finance between the Philippines, Indonesia, and Australia, sharing some best practices of identifying money laundering sources. So with that, I conclude my discussion, and maybe I'll just move on to the live demonstration of the Google Docking. So Google Docking is a very interesting tool that you can use to look into trends of terrorism and say, I want to know things about the Abu Sayyaf. But if I just type Abu Sayyaf, I have about 1,500,000 results, which may or may not be useful for me. However, if I'm using certain tools like, using this quotation marks to narrow down Abu Sayyaf as a single word, the kind of I gradually reduced the number of results. I could also add operators like and. So say sub-function. Right, and it by adding and, so this and operator means that I want articles that have both Abu Sayyaf and Satwajan in the same article, and then it will be reflected on the page. Say if I don't want a specific theme to be shared on Google, I can remove terms like Basilan. Basilan is kind of a name of a location. This ensures that every article that is there does not have the term Basilan in the article, and with that, the results has reduced from 1 million to 18,600. So through these initiatives, through Google Docking, we are able to streamline the kind of results that we want to look at. Of course, through our research, we may want to know different things. So a simple search like this may not actually work. So say I'm researching over a spectrum of groups. So I can have Abu Sayyaf or, sorry, let me just, so such tools could be more complex if we want it to be. So what I'm doing here is that I'm searching for every single article that contains the term Abu Sayyaf or the BIFF, Bangsa Moro Islamic Freedom Fighters, and whether they are surrendered or arrested. And through this, I'm able to collect information on Google in a very effective manner. Another cool thing that we can do with Google is that we can search for specific file types. So let's say let's take same topic in Abu Sayyaf, and I want to know and I want to know things from a specific journal article. And journal articles are usually stored in PDF format. So I can type file type PDF, and every single search results will be a PDF document. Let's say I want Abu Sayyaf to be in the title itself. So I can type in title with a colon, Abu Sayyaf, file type PDF, and the documents that are reflected has Abu Sayyaf in the title itself. So it depends on the kind of search tools that you want to use, the search keywords that you want to use. It will be reflected on Google itself. The reason why I shared this concept with this group is because the idea of Google Docking could be used in various search tools, because this is how computer speaks and how computer understands our language. So say if we want to search in a terrorist forum, so this is one of the terrorist forums that that I'm following, right? Say I want to search for specific WhatsApp channels that I can join. I can type chat.whatsapp and sorry.
What's up? Maybe, yeah, you're missing.
All right, sorry. Yeah, chat.whatsapp, and every post search the results that I have will contain the links chat.whatsapp. So this is a tool that could be used in any situation, be it open source platforms or closed source platforms. I want to share some of the other tools that you can use to conduct your research. And one of my favorite tools is actually this Open Knowledge Maps. Open Knowledge Maps, it is a very easy way to digest, say, any content that you want. So if you are lost and you're approaching a topic for the first time, you can use this website to look for it. So since I know terrorism very well, the topic of terrorism very well, I'll try to look at another topic. Say I want to know about climate change. But what aspect of climate change? Economy, or rather ESG. So I can type something like this in open source, open knowledge maps. And what this website shows, it gathers all the information from reputed journal articles, and then create a Venn diagram of where this knowledge is from. So you can apply this on terrorism, you can apply this on climate change, you can apply this on economics, sciences. This is a very useful tool to understand the topic very well. And as you can see from this, it shows the various topics that are related to climate change and ESG. And if you click onto, say, a specific topic, there's a comprehensive list of articles that are available in various languages. So for example, this is in, I think, French. Yeah, probably French and English. You can actually download the PDF article. Yeah, so this is one of the tools that you can use to analyze terrorism as well. Other tools that you can use to analyze terrorism is this tool called the Live View Map. And this is basically the ISIS map, what people are talking about on ISIS planted on the map. So say I want to look at certain regions, and this is in Syria, right? I want to know what people are talking about in Malaysia, for example. Sorry, selecting region here. Yeah, so there's a wealth of data on these websites, Middle East, Europe. I want to know stuff about Asia. I want to know stuff about, say, Indonesia. And through this, I could identify, these are feeds from Twitter, and Twitter provides this website with all the information that you might need to know, earthquakes, and things like that. Finally, I'll show you how I use Microsoft Excel to collect information. So this is the database I have. It has to be a very systematic database where you have to consistently collect information. I have the date, location, latitude, longitude, group, and so on and so forth. I have categorized the status: killed, arrested, surrendered, and stuff. So through this information, I'm able to generate what I call the counterterrorism indicators by using this tool called pivot tables. And just to take a look at the groups, I could actually select Abu Sayyaf, for example, and the chart changes based on the data that I am interested in. Yeah, and the final thing I will probably share with everyone, it's the use of this tool that my team has developed. It's called the Southeast Asia Militant Database, where it maps out, it's basically the Excel spreadsheet I have shared, but it's the data is put on a map. Um, and as you can see, you have all these data on the map. You can filter the data based on the dates, the group, the activity status. You can look at the distribution of the activities based on groups. And as you can see, Abu Sayyaf in the Sulu is still the group with the highest number of activities in Southeast Asia. It could be based on activity profile. Non-combat operations is the highest type of activity, and then next comes to gunfight, IEDs, and then the surrender operations. And there are also other outcomes. Most of the incidents in Southeast Asia are terrorist arrests. For example, successful cases amounted to about 397 cases. So these are some of the tools that you might want to take a look at. The cool thing about this is that you can go down, scroll into specific incidents, and it will share with you the entire details of the incidents, and click on more information, it will direct you to the specific website that provides this information. So with that, I hope my presentation is comprehensive enough. And I will stop here and take feedback questions from the ground.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Kenneth. I'm deeply sorry to the intruders. Just no intentions to you, but it's just like, that the random Zoom meeting is always like that. If it's open to the public, there's a lot of intruders that just, just passing by and doing something that want to make this forum not good. Okay, thank you so much. It's very, very comprehensive enough. And especially I would like to make sure that this is not only from my students, but actually this meeting is arranged by the Center for Extremism and Radicalism and Security Studies in Indonesia. There's a lot of participants from C-ERSS. Right now, after we hear lots of about how we gather data, especially if we we want to know about the terrorism data, we can use Google Dorking. It's also a new thing for me, especially me as a researcher also. Maybe as because I know I tend to love about security studies right now. Maybe I can apply the Google Dorkings using the quotes, open bracket and close brackets and kind of that stuff. Okay, let's jump into the questions and answers sessions. I'd like to have 3 questions first to Mr. Kenneth. Please raise your hand and then you can directly say your questions. Okay, we already have Kak Daniel Supriyadi.
Kak Daniel Supriyadi.
Supriyadi, okay, sorry.
Okay. Okay, never mind. Okay, good evening, Kenneth. I'm quite impressed with your presentation. So, maybe we know by the last news about your government reject cleric Abdul Somad not to enter to your country, and by your presentation about how your government gathering data. I think so. And then also, I also read the news about 17 years teenager in your country arrested because he was affected by Abdul Somad's preach. So my question is in the next in the future time, how would your government anticipate such as a radical cleric or preacher? I mean, how your government anticipate their preach through YouTube channel? But but I'm sure one of steps is to block their breach channel. So maybe my question is what is your government further step to increase to counter such act? Okay, that's first question, and then the second question is, so would you like to share the website related such as I know as Google, Tech Heaven and others? Would you like to write in chat box? Okay, thank you, Kenneth.
Sure. In terms of the website that I can share, I will share. Those that I cannot share, I will not share. So maybe with regards to the question, we take two more and then I'll answer all of them at a go.
Okay, that's the first question, Kenneth. We jump into the second question, maybe the second and also the third questions on the chat box from Izzah Sania. Good afternoon. Sorry, I cannot open mic right now. I have several questions. The first question is, does this data collection process can be used to develop a new way to foreseeing the next terrorist movements, like maybe the way to recruit the members, the attacks, or etc.? And then the second question is, what is the impact of high frequency mobility of certain narrative would bring to the counterterrorism effort? Okay, maybe for the first sessions, we have those three questions, Kenneth. Now it's time for you to answer that.
Sure. So let me just go through the data collection topic first, because I think that's most relevant to the presentation. And yes, I believe that data collection could be used for predictive efforts to a limited degree. Why do I say that? Because terrorism is a very complex issue. It's impacted by many different variables. This includes government policy. This includes developments beyond the region. So by collecting data within the region, we are able to predict terrorist threats and trends to a certain extent. But if you read analysis from security analysts, you oftentimes see that, hey, if there's a major event, their analysis is more often than not wrong, because for example, if in 2014, when there is almost no more terrorism in Southeast Asia, no one would have predicted that there will be a spike in terrorism after 2014. But then Middle East happens, ISIS happened, and then in Southeast Asia, there's an uproar. So although data collection is able to predict terrorism trends to a certain extent, I think we should be also conservative of what it can do moving forward. With regards to Singapore's government's approach on the radical terrorists, or rather radical preachers, I wouldn't consider Abdul Somad a terrorist. I think he's just a preacher. But firstly, I want to say I don't represent my government. Firstly, these are my own personal views and my own observation. But Singapore takes a very strict approach on categorizing what a radical preacher is, as long as firstly a preacher makes public remarks on race and religion that disrupts the unity of the country, of Singapore, for example, or disrupts the unity of different nationalities in Singapore. I think the government will automatically consider that a radical preacher. So it is a very different matrix that probably other countries may adopt. So I think one of the key words that, or rather the thing that the government identified is that Abdul Somad once called, or rather once made a remark about jinn on the, or rather infidel jinn that's on the cross, vaguely resembling or vaguely referring to Jesus on the cross. And because Singapore regards racial harmony and religious harmony very seriously. That comment was taken against him because he made that comment before. This policy is not only applied to the Muslim preachers. Singapore also have banned Christian preachers, particularly from America, because of divisive language as well, hate speech, where this preacher, I think in 2017, mentioned about how Muslims are a threat to Christianity, and this preacher was banned in Singapore as well. So it's not just Muslim preachers that are banned, you have Christian preachers that are banned. We also ban some Buddhist monks as well. So it's a blanket policy across all religions. And of course, leading back to data collection, right? All this information, all this chatter could not have been found if the authorities do not develop strong data collection mechanisms. So things like Google Docking, things like looking into encrypted platforms are critical tools that I think any security organizations would use to understand the threat landscape. And of course, we set different thresholds. What works in Singapore may not work in other countries. So yeah, it's just a national, local policy. I couldn't hear the other question actually. So let me just look into this. Two questions. Second, what's the impact of high frequency mobility? Okay, so with regards to the impact of narrative on counterterrorism efforts, I would say that narratives has a bigger impact on terrorism than counterterrorism efforts, because counterterrorism is quite responsive to the threat of terrorism. So, for example, if we are looking into the terrorism narrative space, during the pre-ISIS era, they always talk about attacking the near enemy versus the far enemy. And the rationale behind the near enemy, far enemy approach is to chase away the Westerners from Muslim country, Muslim land, for example. So the idea of Dar al-Islam versus Dar al-Haram. So naturally, the kind of targets that they focus on are Western targets, embassies, hotels, planes, ferries, so very Western-centric targets. But as the narrative shifts from this attacking near enemy versus far enemy to this whole idea of Kitau Nikaya versus Kitau Tamkin, the idea is to launch attacks at the enemy, Kitau Nikaya, to weaken the enemy, versus to consolidate force and govern territory, Kitau Tamkin. And then the targets from the previous Western-centric targets shifted to local targets, such as the military, the police, weakening the religious places of worship. So from the shift of terrorist disposition, we also see a shift in government policies to combat the threat. So in that sense, the narratives first impacts terrorist, the terrorist trends first, then impacts government policies. Yeah, so that's the three questions.
Okay, thank you, Kenneth. So if I can a little bit like a conclusions, like we need the narrative first can make the government like portray that this is against the terrorism, any kind of terrorism effort like that. Okay, so anyone have another questions?
I think Daniel mentioned that I have not answered his question yet. So
but you already did.
All right, sure.
Yeah, but you already did. Okay. Maybe if there is no question from the participants, I'd like to ask some questions back again to the data mining. It's first. I saw lots of your writings about how right now the terrorist groups funding their finance through cryptocurrency, yeah, in Southeast Asia. And you said that one of the enablers of the terrorists is the international networks. And right now I can see that right now the networks is not only how the terrorists act, but also how the terrorists need money to fund their movements and kind of that stuff. So can we track the terrorists use the cryptocurrency in Southeast Asia, maybe through their bank accounts or kind of that stuff? Have you already tried those way, Kenneth?
Sure. Let me just answer that question. Unfortunately, cryptocurrencies and also these personal transactions, they are very difficult to track. Banking information are confidential and I do not have access to them. So what I do, it's because I do not have access to this information, then I go down to the ground to speak to officers, banking officers, even the police, to understand the trends and threats of banking. Then I'll move on from there. But besides that, there's also a trend before 2019 where terrorist groups were frequently, let me just turn on the lights because it's raining now. So give me a moment.
Okay.
Sorry. So as I was saying before, terrorist groups tend to put their bank account numbers on Telegram chats, WhatsApp channels. So from that, we are able to share this information with police, the banks, and then they will do their own personal investigations. And sometimes, only sometimes, they report their investigations to us, and then we can follow up on it through our research. With regards to cryptocurrency, it is even more difficult because cryptocurrency, the main objective of cryptocurrency is that they are confidential, anonymized, and it's very difficult to track the transactions. Although there are technologies today to track the transactions, to centralize the blockchain data, there are emerging, more emerging secret or rather anonymized channels that may like disrupt investigation efforts. So what we can only do is to retrieve all these Bitcoin wallets, crypto wallets, and report them to the agencies, because ultimately I'm only a researcher. I'm not an enforcer. So I work closely to the enforcement agencies to get this information shared and the terrorist operations disrupted. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much. Maybe it will be really interesting, you know, that maybe you can in the future you can conduct research towards that, because right now, especially the threat is emerging right now. Maybe the terrorists right now is not only about want to have the state sovereignty, but right now they want recognitions from around the world, that they need the fear of the peoples around the world, that right now the terrorist is still here. Okay, move to the questions on the chat box. Kenneth, maybe you can also read them from Faktu Rosie. How many tools actually that you recommend to use for data collections? And since each tool might have abundant results, I'm still cannot quite grasp on how you determine what kind of information or data is useful or not, and how we set the limitations, which one we should conduct and which one is we need to limit it. Okay, maybe you can answer first.
Okay. So that is actually a very difficult question to answer. So it covers, so the most important thing is to answer the research question. So the way we design our research question would determine the type of data that we will be collecting. So for example, the tool that I will be sharing, which I am typing up right now, it's a tool to understand, firstly, the locations of where terrorist activities are. So that's how I get the hotspots and stuff. And secondly, to understand the terrorist membership over time. That's why I collected the number of terrorists who are killed, arrested, and surrendered. So it's only with a good understanding of the research question that you can develop or rather collect data in a systematic manner. The other thing about Google Documents, for example, say, all right, there's a very recent example that I can share, right? So let me just pull up screen to demonstrate. Just give me a moment. All right, I have a screen here. So let me just share screen and show some of the more recent examples. So for example, me as a Singaporean, I want to conduct research on a very hot topic, Abdul Somad Batu Bara, right? So if I type this on, right, there's a lot of information about, Singapore refusing entry to this preacher. So what I can do is instead of, I don't want to see anything about Singapore about this on this preacher. And after typing about this on this, I know that I need to remove Singapore from the picture. And there I have other, there's also Singapura, sorry. Singapore. Yeah, so I can remove everything about Abdul Somad Batu Bara and Singapore. And if I want to search a specific time zone, I can do it as well. So the idea is that it is a explorative mechanism where it's not just that I immediately get the search key, the Google Docking key, but I can continue to try to experiment with these keys to understand what is the right key to use. So it's not a one shot I get the answer, but I keep trying, and then there's some errors, I try again, and there's other errors. So it's actually a pretty explorative process rather than okay, I can plan everything out and then look on Google. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, hopefully that's answered the questions. Maybe
Stop sharing.
okay, maybe any other questions? So maybe it is a general knowledge that we are, as the researchers, have our own rights to to determine our scope of research first. We should know what we want to answer, what is actually our research questions. So that's just like Kenneth said, it's very explorative. We need the time to answer that. It can be just one click and then you already answer and giving a best paper, not like that. We need the time to explore more about our research questions. Kenneth, those are the tools that can be used actually, especially on data mining. Okay, maybe another member from C-ERSS relations lecturers, and I also really love to know about low politics agenda, and especially terrorism. I know a little bit about terrorism, especially terrorism is one of the transnational organized crime. So that's why we need to work together, not only as researchers. Maybe researchers just want to make sure that this is the current issues that we are facing right now, but we also need the governments to make some policy to stop the terrorists and kind of that stuff. Okay, any other questions? We still have a time. We still have a time, Kenneth.
What I can do is to maybe do a live demonstration of a research process. So maybe someone could come up with a research question, then I could show you how I can use Google and maybe social media to look up this some of the research topics, and just to give some tips on how I would approach this topic.
Okay, maybe someone. If not, it should be related to terrorism or not.
Can be anything under the sun. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe about climate change and COP26.
Okay. Climate change and COP26. So So firstly, I need to get the COP26. And assuming I don't know what COP26 is, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
let me just assume that I don't know anything and go back to my screen, Google. So what I can do is I can type climate change with this close bracket and COP26. From my brief knowledge, COP26 is probably a document, so I can type and file type PDF. And immediately I will have COP26 as the top search, right? You probably don't need to type file type, but I just do it because these are the specific things I want to look out for. Also for COP26, we have this Youth Climate Change Manifesto that I might be interested in, so I'll just open a new tab. And even in UK, the Parliament UK did mention something about it. So within this document, it's a 94-page document. Of course, I will not read the entire 94-page document. So the first thing I'll look out for is maybe a content page if there are. Oh, this is an agenda. So probably I wouldn't find anything much from this agenda. I'll look at this. There is probably some form of content page. So key messages. And immediately I would know that, hey, they are looking at capacity building, increasing funding, energy and green jobs. They'll give me some sense of what is going on. Say if I want to know about the energy transition, I will type in the search column, energy. And then I know there's 59 results. I will just scroll through every sentence that includes the word energy and just take a brief look at it. Because it's a huge document, and sometimes as researcher we are digesting so much information, so we want to ensure that we get the most out of it. So keywords on looking out for keywords in PDF is pretty important, so that we can take out the noise and stuff. We can do the same for the UK parliamentary context. And since we have read the Youth Climate Manifesto, we would also want to look out for energy in the UK section. So through this process, we'll be able to get a good idea of what the COP26 is talking about, the energy transition, and from there develop some hypothesis. If I may, I would, because of my current knowledge on climate change, I would go up to Twitter and type keywords on Twitter live feed to look at. I won't do it now, but I would suggest looking at Twitter live feed to understand the developments on climate change. And sometimes you get more information on Twitter than on these public journals. So that's how I would approach the topic.
Okay, so sometimes we need to go over the Twitter to know what is currently happening, maybe related to climate change or kind of stuff. Okay, thank you, Kenneth. Yeah. Okay, Kenneth. We still have questions on the chat box. Is just out of curiosity, does the government perhaps also need the data collections from university researchers? Maybe Kenneth can answer that because Kenneth is research.
Sure.
Okay, can answer first, Kenneth.
So with regards to government needing data from us researchers, I would say that it's not just the governments, but also international organizations. So I'll just share a little bit of my experience. I've shared my research findings with the government of the Philippines, Singapore, and also Indonesia. I've also presented in multiple forums, in fact, international forums. The United Nations has requested for my research in multiple occasions. So researchers do have a role, can play an impact on in the greater security spaces. I would say it's not just about publishing data, but also, as you said, collaborating with the government. And there's some upsides and downsides to it. The upsides of it is that you can collaborate with the government. The downside is that you have to be somewhat recognized before the government kind of approach you to get some of your data and your analysis. So the way to do it is to, in my opinion, to publish as much as possible. So if you're able to publish in recognized platforms like the Diplomat, in your local newspapers, get your ideas seen by the public, the government, or even international organizations will look out for you. Yeah.
Okay, that's the tips from Kenneth. And also, I think the diplomats and many and any other medias that have international coverage, it's very help you to get the recognitions, right? So after you get the recognitions, and then the government, maybe not only the government, maybe UN reach out you to hear your voices, to hear your mind on kind of that stuff. Okay. Okay, the next questions is from Daniel. How to search PDF article? Already mentioned by Kenneth. You can type file, type ..pdf on the Google search, and then move to the next questions. Okay, already mentioned by Kenneth on chat. Rosie asks, how deep these data collections can go, and does it ever cross with the issues of data privacy from the data mining?
Right. This is a very, very good question, and I'd like to applaud this question. So yes, there's always the issue of data privacy, and I also talk about emphasize on data security, because if you are dealing with dangerous organizations, you might not want to. You might want to be private as well. You don't want to share your information to the terrorists as well. So I'll first talk about personal security, and then talk about data privacy. And I'll share experience. So when I was a little bit younger, newer to this space, I had a tip off through various sources that this guy, this particular terrorist is on LinkedIn, and I got excited. I kind of stalked this guy on LinkedIn, and then found out that oh no, I'm using my own personal account, and then and not just that, I alerted the potential terrorist that I'm actually looking at him. And if you looked at my LinkedIn account, it's clearly a terrorism analyst as a header. So I naturally become a target. So I would say that it's very important to keep make sure that you are secure before you engage in any of these data mining operations. Secondly, issues of privacy, I think it's very important. We always follow the privacy guidelines. So as long as there's no immediate threats, we do not collect information such as name. We do not collect information such as contact number, address, email address, things like this. So this is to ensure that this personalized data is still being protected as we are conducting our research. However, it is very important, right? So this idea of data privacy only applies if there's no immediate threat. But if there's an immediate threat where we see certain individuals saying that, hey, we are going to bomb this place at whatever time, or we are going to do a fundraising activity, then it is essential that we report this personalized data if you're able to collect it. So data privacy, the lines of data privacy, although it's pretty blur, we uphold data privacy to the extent that there's no immediate threat. Once there's an immediate threat, actionable threat, we as researchers are obligated to report this to the authorities. That's my opinion on this.
Okay, thank you. I think it's very clear enough. Okay, we have a questions. Most of open source intelligence tools were Linux based. Is there any tools that easy to use for Windows users?
I would say that most of the Linux tools can be used by, on Windows platform if you download the software. So I will share, maybe I'll share with the organizers some of my what I call cyber ethnography notes, and then you can download this software. It's basically Bukastador. It's a virtual computer where if virtual Linux computer, if you're using a Mac or Windows, you can use it to create a computer within a computer. to monitor various platforms. So maybe I can boot it up. It will take some time. Let me boot it up, show you how it works. Since we have some time, right? So this is VirtualBox, virtual computer. Share screen. So this is a virtual computer, and it's Linux based. I'm using Windows computer, by the way. So it's Linux based. You can download this. I will share the sources with you in the future. And basically now I have a Linux computer within my Windows computer. The cool thing about this is that I can actually, the whole entire platform is organized the way that I understand it, that could be easily understand. So if I want to know things about phone numbers, there are phone numbers guides for me, social media, usernames, everything is already arranged in a very simplified manner for me to understand. But I would say the most important tool for OSINT is not this, very complex Linux tools which I use. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. The most important tool is let me just find it. This tool called Maltego. It takes some time to boot up, but Maltego is a very useful tool to conduct, as you can see, offensive security. I would not go into detail on how to do it because I think this privileged information, right? But if you are interested, you can look up Maltego. It is free. The community edition is free, and through this Maltego software, I'm able to find various terrorist websites that are online. Just to give you an example, and I do not recommend anyone using this without a VPN. So if you're using this tool, please use a VPN to ensure that your security, you're secure. Some of the things that we are able to develop using this tool includes this mind map of terrorist websites from actually 2 websites. I am able to find multiple websites affiliated to terrorist organizations. So just 2 websites. And then all this information can be generated, be it email addresses, IP addresses, other websites. I will not go into too deep into this, but if you are interested to use this tool, please purchase a VPN and then you are free to use it. Yeah.
Okay, it's more advanced. You need to secure your data first by, migrating your VPN first. Okay, hope that helps to answer. And then the next questions we have from Reza. Since the data available on the internet, public or encrypted sources as ever-changing, how do the data analyze can catch up the validity of the data they collected?
This is very, very good question. So firstly, there's no way we'll be able to validate some of this data. So what I think the best practice is that whatever data we collected, we make sure that there are 2 different sources that reported the same data. For example, if the Philippines news agency reported that 20 terrorists surrendered, I make sure that there are other different sources that reported the same thing before I document the data. Same goes to what I've seen on social media, where say recently, for example, they said there's an attack in the Thailand police station. I'll make sure that the Bangkok Post also reported the same attack before I document the attack. So, or rather, ensure in my mind, categorize it as valid and reliable. However, we should also know that because in insurgency and warfare situations, information is very transient. So although it is a reliable information, we should also be prepared to challenge our assumptions at any point in time, because this information could be from a reliable source, but unvalidated. So it is very important to ensure that to keep an open mind, to tell ourselves that although this reliable information, it might not be completely true, and then we can move on from there. I think one of the greatest challenge of working in the security sector is that we have to be comfortable with uncertainties and be comfortable to challenge our assumptions that we previously have. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Next questions. I hope that's answer enough. The next question from Daniel again. Is teachhaven.com also useful for searching?
I would discourage everyone from using TechHaven, particularly because it's a specialized ISIS channel. So I strongly discourage, although I'm showing it to everyone, I strongly discourage because if you are not protected, they could potentially reverse engineer your IP address and then look for you. So unless you're certain that your internet privacy is protected, you have a VPN, firewall, everything on, I strongly discourage people from using TechHaven to look up for information on terrorist activities. And the other thing I would share is that most of the things that can be found on TechHaven could potentially be found on open source as well, because there are analysts in TechHaven to look through these forums. So in a way, there's no need to look into TechHaven unless you want very up-to-date information. But if you are not, if information is not urgent, you can wait 2-3 days and someone will have reported developments on TechHaven.
Okay, thanks for your warning, Kenneth. Okay, next question is from Dr. Rosie. Maybe this is more into the technical questions. Based on your short demonstrations, how do you recommend to set up the computer to ensure the safety of our PC and geolocations?
So firstly, I think getting the very basics is to use VPN. And then secondly, you download the Tor browser. And then if you are familiar with Linux, you enable the Tor browser and switch on your VPN before you engage in any cyber monitoring. So that's my short advice to them. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to secure our cyber with changing our VPN first. Okay. Rosie also through a browser, then it took forever.
Yeah, unfortunately. It is part of the trade-offs where you want to be secure. So maybe I just repeat what Dr. Rosie shared. Like Tor browser, if you use the Tor browser, it will take a very long time to load, and that's part of security, because the way Tor browser works is that it will bounce your IP address to several different IP addresses before reaching the site. So it is difficult for the hacker to reverse hack. So once they reverse hack, they hack the wrong IP address. They have to do it 3 times before it gets to you. So that's why it takes a longer time to load the browser, because of the additional layer of security. So unfortunately, there's a reverse security and efficiency is inversely correlated in cyber security and also in physical security. So the more security measures you have, the less efficient your processes becomes. So that's the trade-off that we probably need to take in terms of ensuring our security. Also, if it helps, get a computer with sufficient RAM to process the Tor browser. Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions to Kenneth? Okay, maybe we need a time. Kenneth, based on your experience, what is your biggest obstacles to conduct research, especially in terrorist issues?
I think the biggest obstacle is experience. So as a junior researcher back in the day, I did not have knowledge on Google Docings. I did not have access to social media platforms. I do not have access to security agencies, for example. So it's very difficult to start the process of learning the skills, difficult to develop networks, and difficult to penetrate into various social media platforms. So that's the difficulty that I face in terms of starting my career in terrorism research. But as I progress, it's 4 years into the career for me. I'm able to develop a strong understanding of Google Docking, develop a database, penetrate into several platforms, and also develop networks. Things gets easier, but then I have another set of problems, right? Which is that I then realized that even the security agencies may not know the complete picture of the threat in the region, in the specific region. So one of the key things that I share with newer colleagues, my juniors, and people that I manage is that we have to be very comfortable with uncertainty, because it is in this trade, things happen very quickly. We do not have complete information, and even let's talk about leadership, right? So there is a period of time that we don't know who the leader of the Maute group is, and the security agencies have like 2-3 suspects that might be the leader. Then when ISIS announced the leader, hey, it's not part of the 2-3 suspects that we have. So we have to be very, very comfortable with uncertainty. We need to know that we are not able to prevent every single threat. Some things will just slip off our grasp, and we shouldn't blame ourselves for it. So but we still try to do our best to ensure that the region is safe and secure to the best of our abilities. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing, Kenneth. Actually, I'm more curious about one of the things, I don't know, it's not a big terrorist movement, but it's just very common right now in Europe. We know about vehicle ramming attacks. And how is your opinion towards that?
I would share a joke about vehicle ramming attacks, right? So if we look at Southeast Asia, we have, if I recall right, 2 recorded incidents of vehicle ramming attacks. And the joke I share with my peers is that we don't see a lot of vehicle ramming attacks in Singapore and Indonesia, for example, because of traffic jams. So if there's a traffic jam, then there's no way to do a vehicle ramming attack. So but the truth of the matter, I would not know, but this is kind of like a hypothesis, a joke that I share with my peers.
Okay, is there any questions towards Kenneth? We still have a time. Kenneth, maybe in the future, I can contact you to, just maybe in the future, I will conduct some research towards terrorism or any kind of relating to security studies.
Sure. What I will do is maybe I'll share my email address on the chat. Yeah. So if anyone else has any other questions, you can reach out to me. Yeah. So my email is on the chat. And then if you have further questions, you can reach out to me. Just another joke, IS in my email does not stand for Islamic State. It stands for International Studies. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Iza has another question.
Iza, you can read it.
Okay. How data analysts present their collected data to researchers or stakeholders to be easily understood? This is a very, very good question. Unfortunately, I have not mastered the skill of presenting data yet, but what I found very useful is to put it on a chart and then be able to tell a story. let me just pull out my presentation again and show you how or maybe I pull out another presentation to tell. Never mind. I use the current presentation that I have to tell. So storytelling is a very important tool that I think every researcher needs to develop. And I will use this chart as an example for storytelling. Right. So the way I presented to you is that, hey, there's a 2019, there's a spike, and then there's a decline in 2020, maybe because of COVID. But if I were to present to the United Nations or certain security agencies, I'll then tell a story of the history of terrorism using this chart. So what we are saying is that before 2014, there is absolutely no terrorist incidents from 2008 to 2014. However, there's this slight increase in terrorism in 2014. What happened? What we know as researchers is that Islamic State began to organize themselves and they declared the caliphate. And from 2014 to 2016, we are seeing an increase, almost more than double the number of terrorist incidents in Southeast Asia. And what happened in 2017? 2017, we see a slight decline in terrorist incidents, but it's not due to the threat being reduced, but due to the Marawi siege, where terrorist activities are concentrated in the Philippines. So although the terrorists in the Philippines in Marawi were defeated, terrorism continued to skyrocket from 2018 to 2019. And between 2018 to 2019, we see a series of different developments: family suicide bombings in the Philippines, which is unprecedented. So in the past, we don't have suicide bombings in the Philippines. And what happened is suddenly stopped. Given the upward trajectory, it does not make sense for terrorism to come to be reduced in such a significant manner. So what do we know about 2020? COVID happened. So we definitely know that COVID has an impact on terrorism because of the sharp decline in terrorist incidents in Southeast Asia. But what exactly caused the decline in terrorism? Is it COVID itself or the government policies that reduce the opportunities for terrorists to operate? So with this example of having a chart and being able to tell a story through a chart, we are able to entice the authorities, firstly, to show that we know the topic sufficiently, and we're able to provide explanations to each point in the chart in the graph. So I hope that helps in terms of explaining how I develop data and then present data to the authorities.
And you're one of the researchers who is very good at storytelling the graph itself. So the people maybe who is not very keen enough about terrorist things, and he or she should understand you. Okay. Another question from Iza. Does the data analysis usually also ask to present how the narrative's going on the backs up every point in the graphs you presented?
Not necessarily. Generally, I pinpoint 2 to 3 significant developments on the graph and then present it, because if you've seen my slides, it is very data heavy. I cannot afford to spend 5 minutes on the slide. So depending on the audience, I would pick a specific point to elaborate and then move on to the next slide. So as I think it goes back to the entire framework that I've shared earlier, the research question, right? So for this audience, I keep it more general, keep it more broad. But if say your government or United Nations invites you to present on a specific topic, you will know their research question, and you can focus on their research question in a more significant manner, rather than presenting the entire data set, which they may or may not be interested in. Because what I've said before during that demonstration of storytelling, these are things that experts would already know. People from the United Nations would already know. So they don't need me to tell that story. But they probably get me on board to elaborate on something more specific that I can provide my expertise on. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. You don't have to stop at every point in the graph to elaborate, but you can just pick key points to elaborate. Yeah.
Okay, I think I also agree with that, because when I saw lots of UN or UNDP's report, they just want to make sure this is the key points where there is some phenomena, for examples, like why it's declining in the 2020 because there is a COVID or kind of stuff. So that's the point to make sure how the audience know about you. And like in the beginning of this sections, Kenneth also asked, who is the audience? That's why that also helps to Kenneth to present how he want to present their presentations. Okay, any other questions? We still have the time. Okay, perhaps there is no more questions, Kenneth. We come into the ending sections right now. Thank you again, Kenneth, for answering those questions and also, like helping us to know how to gather research, especially in terrorists, using maybe Google Dorking and kind of the stuff. Okay, it was a pleasure to have you with us. Now we come into the ending sessions. Let me conclude first, actually, about what Kenneth has taught us, especially if you want to conduct research in counter-terrorism, you can use Google Dorking first. It's very easy to use, or maybe you can use OSINT, and also, of course, academic journals. Okay, academic journals is also really helping, especially if you're universities students. And also the enablers for terror is also all about international networks, local supports, and also funding. And actually, to sum up, we need to work together, especially if we want to know more about the terrorists, not about the data minings, but also the holistic approach we can counter together about terrorism. Before end these sessions, Kenneth, let's hear a closing statement, maybe from you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here. I had a very enjoyable discussion with the people here. Although I'm sharing information about my research, I'm sure that in the future I will be able to learn from you in your respective areas of expertise. So I hope to hear from you again very soon, and look forward to potential areas of collaboration. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kenneth. And I'm so sorry for any inconvenience for the intruders. And this also concludes our webinar today. Thank you all for attending, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed these presentations. Thank you so much, Kenneth, and good afternoon. Thank you, Kenneth. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Kenneth.
Thank you.